Okay, here we go. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It's supposed to be a lot more students showing up, but my guess is they're going to be trickling in slowly because we usually use Canvas conferences, but since I'm combining two classes into one conference, I am using WebEx. So a lot of students aren't prepared for that. So let's go ahead and get started. So basically what we're doing this tonight is going over course policies so you know what I expect in the class, and then also going through some examples of transactions, which is basically what we're going to do the rest of the quarter. We're going to be given a transaction. We're going to look at it and figure out where the amounts need to go. And so it's essentially all accounting really is. So the agenda, let's see if I can zoom in. So we're going to go over the course expectations, homework policy, what accounting is and is not. A lot of people have misconceptions about accounting when they first start the class. Why study accounting besides the fact that it is required? The elements of accounting, which is basically what chapter 2 is starting with, going over the accounting equation. We're going to analyze some transactions, go through some examples, go over financial statements, which we will start doing, that we will start completing this week, do a quick question and answer session, and then closing thoughts. This should take about an hour, but I planned an hour and a half just on the safe side. If you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat room so I can see them and make sure, or you can unmute your microphone and ask a question that way. It's completely up to you. So I haven't quite figured out how the poll works on WebEx. It's a lot different than what I'm used to. So let me see if I can add a quick poll. Okay. So accounting sounds boring, challenging, interesting, or hard work. So in the chat area, which is over to your right, what would you think it would be? Would accounting be boring, challenging, interesting, or hard? There we go. Challenging. It's yes and no. It's really not as bad as it seems. I know it sounds confusing. Really, we're given a transaction. We have to break the transaction down and to figure out which accounts are we going to be using, and then figure out the amount. Most of the time in this class, the amount is given to us. So we just have to determine which accounts we're going to be dealing with. So that's usually, it's not too bad, I promise. When I first took this class, I swore I would hate it. Unfortunately, my father was my instructor, and I swore up and down I was going to hate the class the entire quarter. But it wasn't as bad as I anticipated. So hopefully it turns out that way for you. So, setup of the course. My guess is you're not a first quarter student. So basically the class is going to be set up exactly like every other class at Harrison. Everything is broken down into modules. We have the weekly discussions. I've already had one student ask why we're having a discussion this week, since we do have the conferences this week. I actually wanted to keep the discussion for this week just because it's a very good question. It starts getting you thinking about accounting and how to break things down. So most of the time we will still have discussions. Our next conferences are in week 9 and 10. I have not looked at the discussions for those 2 weeks yet, so I don't know if we're still going to have those. But for now, assume that discussions will still be held. The assignments have changed since last quarter. We updated to the newest edition of the textbook. So the assignments have changed. So if you've taken the class before, the assignments are a lot different. There's more of the problems to complete, but it's going to give you more of a cross-section of the class and what you need to know to be successful in the class. The software, you definitely need Microsoft Word and Excel. Adobe PDF would be helpful, but it is not required. I will do files in, I'm trying to cross off Chelsea's name here. I don't see it. Okay, so I will be having, so software, PDF, not necessary. It would come in handy. What you do need definitely is Excel and Word. From here on out, starting this week, assignments will be in Excel. I already have all the tabs created on the bottom of the forms. So make sure you scroll over to all of the forms at the bottom of Excel. In the first assignment video for this week, I do show you how to scroll to the different tabs on the file if you don't know that already. So that is something you may want to look at. The assignment videos, I am currently in the process of redoing those from the last textbook. I have weeks 2, 3, and 4 currently uploaded, so you will have access to those. And then office hours, depending if you're in section 3, office hours are Tuesday in the chat room. If you're in section 1, office hours are Wednesdays in the class chat room. Both days are 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or by appointment if you can't make that and you need questions answered. So I am very open to communication. So you can text me, you can email me. I live out in the country, so the phone is not always the best option. But if you need to call, please do call. Okay. Homework expectations. I can usually tell when a student hasn't read the chapter. Dead giveaways on assignments. I can usually tell when students are not quite understanding the material, but have failed to ask questions or get help. I've been teaching this class for about 10 years, so I can definitely tell when students are not getting the information. So please ask. Again, text, email are usually the easiest options. If you have Yahoo Instant Messenger, I also have that on my computer and my cell phone, so you can get in touch with me that way. Due dates, the standard Harrison due dates. Wednesday night for your initial posts, Sunday night for your response to at least 2 peers, as well as the homework assignments. Let's see, discussion requirements. The discussion requirements are a lot more than they have been in the past. You're going to be given a lot of ethical situations and you need to respond to those. And you may need to include outside research. You may need to include information from the text. But if you do use outside sources or the textbook, you need to include the reference. In week, I think it's the week 1 module, I gave you a reference cheat sheet, which basically gives you examples on how to complete how you complete the actual reference. So if you're using a textbook, it shows you how to use the textbook, how to cite correctly the textbook, or if a web page, yeah, it's in module 1. So you can go there and print that out if need be. Late policy, I'm pretty lenient the first week because we have new students waiting to get textbooks. But the late policy is pretty stringent just because with this class, it is hard to catch up if you get too far behind. It's possible, but it will take a lot of hard work. So the late policy is, it's pretty sure I have a slide. It is 10% for 1 to 7 days, it's 10% late. It's 10% off. 8 days to 14 days, it is 20% off. 15 days or over, it is 50% off the score you would have earned. I try not to do 50% off, especially if there is a valid reason. So make sure you communicate with me for anything that comes up. So maybe you can't, your internet goes down, there's a big storm, family emergency. Make sure you keep in contact with me. That is the best way to make sure I can help. And then attendance requirements. You have to be active in at least one class, and then you'll stay enrolled in all of your classes. So it's a somewhat different attendance policy. So you do not need to post in the discussion area that you're posting for participation credit as long as you are participating fully in one of your classes. So are there any questions on the homework help, or I'm sorry, the homework expectations? Yes, getting behind is horrendous. Live out in the country. Yeah. See, that happens here too. My internet works fine off the Wi-Fi. The other internets in the house have to go off their cell phone for their computer. Yeah. So that is a challenge. Let's see. Assignments, so are you talking about when you're actually trying to pull up the forms or watch the videos? The assignment forms can be, I know local libraries usually have free internet where you could actually download the form onto your computer. Also, if you received the working papers with your textbook, you can do the assignments in the working, okay. You can do the assignments in the, sorry, it's been a long day. You can do the assignments in the working papers if you've received it, and then just transfer them onto Word, onto the Excel forms later, since you do have an actual textbook. Or you could download the forms. I use the OneDrive to keep track of everything for me. So you could download it to the OneDrive and then pull it up on your computer and then just turn off the hotspot while you enter everything in Excel. So that's a possibility. If the videos don't load, I do have a YouTube channel where I house all of the videos for the classes I teach and the ones I've taught in the past. So I don't know how the hotspot would work with YouTube versus Canvas. So that I'm not sure about. Yes, I actually pay Microsoft the $10 a month for a terabyte hard drive. So that is what I use to keep track of everything. All of my past school assignments, all of my past syllabi, everything that I used for grad school is on the OneDrive. So I have it instant access. Okay, late policy of the course. So this is the one. So the answer, this is actually a tricky one just because both of them, C and D, give you 10% off. It is actually D. It is 10% for 1 to 7 days, 20% to 8 to 14 days, and then over 15 days, it's 50% off. Again, I try not to do the 50% off. Depending on circumstances, if you are over the 15 days, I may take 20, 30% off, but I try not to take the 50% off. So just because I know grades are important. Okay. Accounting this is hopefully to help quell your fears a little. Basically, it's the way to keep track of financial transactions. For example, if you run by Walmart and pick up some groceries on the way home. So the transaction is buying groceries at Walmart. So you would have two transactions, you'd have two accounts, you'd have cash, and you would have food. And so that is how you would keep track of your financial transactions. Or if you get gas, it's going to be cash, or if you put it on a credit card, it would be accounts payable and then cash and then gas. So that's basically all accounting is. We're going to use the information that we get from the transactions to form financial statements. We're going to do income statements, see how much money the company has earned that period. A lot of the time in accounting, the period is just a month. For smaller businesses, it could be 3 months. Larger companies usually do a 12-month fiscal year, but the accounting period could be by 2 weeks, it could be by a month. It really depends on the business, so it's all individualized. Then we have statement of owner's equity. How much capital is the company worth? And then the balance statement. Does the assets equal what the owner has in the company plus what the company owes to other businesses, such as their own credit card debt, or if they purchased vehicles, that would be a liability. It's going to be a way to tell the financial health of a business. It's going to tell you whether or not a company is losing money, gaining money, if they're just breaking even. So we're going to be able to figure that out. It is usually done by a bookkeeper or an accountant. Usually bookkeepers are hired and they're given one specific area to focus on, such as accounts payable or accounts receivable. So they don't get the whole picture of accounting, they just get that one snapshot. Some companies are now cross-training their bookkeepers. So if one bookkeeper is out or somebody quits unexpectedly, the other bookkeepers know how to complete that other person's job. It doesn't happen real often, but in smaller companies, it's becoming more common to cross-train employees. And finally, we're going to be using the double entry method. So for this class, basically it means that each transaction we're going to use at least 2 accounts. There are some transactions that we will use 3. For this class, we will not use 4 accounts in one transaction. The most we have is 3, and that's usually later on in the quarter. So are there any questions on what accounting is? Kind of a basic overview. Okay. What accounting is not? It is not your checking account. This is the thing a lot of students struggle with. You have to completely forget everything you think you know about the terms debit and credit. Debit and credit in accounting essentially means left and right. When you debit a transaction, it's on the left. When you credit an account, it's on the right. No matter what side of the equation it's on, debit is always left, credit is always right. For example, when we have assets are increased with a debit. When we think of our bank account, assets are increased with a credit. In accounting, because assets are on the right side of the equation, assets are on the left side of the equation, they are done with a debit. So on the first couple of assignments, you're going to see we're going to focus on the transaction. If I can type. So for the most part, everything on the left, such as assets, is going to be increased with a debit. And pretty much everything on the right side, so that would be the liabilities and owner's equity, those are going to be increased with a credit. For the most part, there's a couple accounts are going to be a little different. But for the most part, if you remember that equation, it's going to come in handy. A lot of people, when they're starting the class, go, I'm horrible at math. I can't do math. I'm not going to do good in this class. Accounting is not all about numbers. 75% of it is getting the transactions and using the correct accounts. So as long as you can interpret the transaction correctly and figure out which accounts you're going to use, you should be fine. It does not involve a lot of math. 90% of our math is going to be addition and subtraction. And I would definitely recommend, even if you can do the mental math for it, break out the calculator. Double check your mental math. Even as I was doing the videos for the first couple of weeks, I was going, oh, I don't need to use a calculator. I can calculate this in my head. Unfortunately, I was more tired that day than I thought I was, and I was struggling, so I had to break out the calculator. So you will see in the videos, I actually calculate the wrong amount, and then remind you to break out the calculator. So definitely use a calculator. If you know how to do calculations in Excel, depending on what you're trying to do, go for using Excel to do the calculator for you. On one of the videos, pretty sure I show you how to enter in the formula by hand into Excel or use the auto sum feature. Definitely utilize the resources that you have around you. It's a big thing I try to tell students over and over again. You cannot get this homework done in a half hour. So you cannot start the homework at 11 o'clock Sunday night and expect to get it done by 11:30. Excuse me. This is going to take some planning on your part, especially since the assignments have gotten bigger since last quarter. This was very true last quarter that you cannot get it done in a half hour. You definitely cannot get it done in a half hour now. Even me using the answer key to fill in the required forms would not get it done in a half hour. So make sure you plan in advance. Any questions on what accounting is not? I'm going to take the radio silence as a no. Okay, why study accounting? Since one. Most majors require it for graduation. It does increase your job prospects. If you show a prospective employer a syllabus that shows what type of accounting you've done, it increases your chance of getting hired because not many people know how to do accounting by hand. They're strictly dependent on some type of computer program to do it for them. So, if nobody has told you, always, always, always keep copies of your syllabi. That can prove to your current employer or a prospective employer that you've had training in a specific area. So you should always keep your syllabi from every class you take. If you can keep samples of your work, that's even better. So you're going to need that. I just finished a master's program last May, and I have every assignment I submitted, every comment from the instructors, copies of every syllabus from every class, even if I didn't think it was necessarily pertinent to potential careers. I still have it. So that is definitely something you would want to keep to show employers. And you can apply accounting to your everyday life. If you are trying to budget, you can see where your money is going. You can see if you're spending too much on fast food, or if you can see you budget $100 at the grocery store and you accidentally, consistently spend $150, $200. That's something you can look at and say, okay, where can I cut money from? It helps you give you that perspective that you may need. So, okay, that is pretty much all of what I typically cover the first week. So let's get down to the nitty gritty of accounting. So this week we're going to start. You should, if you haven't read chapter 2 yet, which it's Tuesday, pretty sure you haven't done that yet. I never started reading until Thursday. Never a good idea, by the way. So we have 3 elements to accounting, and those are evident in the accounting equation. We have assets. Those are the things the business already owns. If we are doing a restaurant, it could be food, the tables, the items in the kitchen. If there's a delivery car that they use for catering service, that would be there. That would be an asset. Liabilities, something one business owes to another. So if the business has credit cards, those are liabilities. If you have your utility bill, that's a liability. Your gas bill, a liability. The loan on your car or the loan on the delivery, liability. The mortgage on the restaurant, on the building the restaurant is actually housed in, that is a liability. If you purchase if you purchase groceries from another company and you say, oh, I'll pay you at the end of the month, when you say you'll pay at the end of the month, that is considered a liability. Owner's equity. Basically, it's how much money the owner has invested or owners has invested in that company. So if I purchased the restaurant and I invested $30,000 of my own money, that is part of owner's equity because that has the owner's name attached to it. If the owner takes money out of the account, out of the business, that is owner's equity. Sometimes businesses, when they're first being developed, the owner doesn't give themselves a salary. They just take out money to meet their personal expenses. That is an owner's equity transaction because it physically involves the owner. So do those 3 elements make sense? We're definitely going to get into it more. Excuse me. Okay, I just want to make sure that everything is understandable. If I lose you, let me know and we'll stop and slow down. So the standard formula, excuse me, as I already mentioned, assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. That is the standard format. If you remember back to your Algebra 1 classes or pre-algebra classes, high school, junior high, Harrison, I think at least Harrison used to have like a basic math course. Same thing. So you can basically, as long as you know 2 of the amounts, you can always find the third. So if you know just liabilities and owner's equity, you can find how much the business has in assets. If you know assets and liabilities, you can figure out owner's equity. If you know owner's equity, you can figure out liabilities. It's basically just moving the formula around based on the information you have. This question is actually something similar is actually on your Canvas conference assignment, which I will send you out the passcode when we're through. That way you can take it. So does the formula make sense? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. So the assets and the liabilities and owner's equity, they have to equal the assets. So you could have, so let's go back to this account. We could have, so our liabilities could be $2,500 and your owner's equity is $7,000. So just based on those two amounts, you know your assets have to equal $9,500. That's just how the formula works. If those two amounts don't add up to your assets, then something is wrong somewhere. On let me see, 2-9, you actually really get into putting the amounts in the equation under the right account and making sure that after every transaction, everything balances the same. So if we're going straight by the formula, the liabilities, and the liabilities could be anything. It could be you have a mortgage payment. You have a mortgage payment. You owe another business $5,000 for food that you purchased on account. Owner's equity, it's what the owner took out of the account. Did the owner put money back into the account? Did the owner make any additional investments? How much has the company earned? Yeah. Assets are pretty much things that the business owns, what they have on hand. So the technical definition of assets is basically anything that can be turned into cash. So inventory can be sold for cash. Food can be sold for cash. A vehicle that the company has can be sold for cash. So assets could be pretty much anything that they can be put to cash. So if you're waiting for a customer to pay you, say you're a carpenter and you did some work, you built an outside shed for a customer. They give you $1,000 as a down payment, but they promise to pay you $9,000 they promise to pay you little by little. That $9,000 that the customer owes you, that is actually still an asset because you can get that $9,000 from the customer. It may not be easy, but you can still get it from the customer. So assets are pretty much anything that can be changed into cash. So it doesn't necessarily have to be objects, but that's typically what they are. So definitely that will get a lot more clear as we go through, especially when you start the homework for this week, if you haven't started it yet. Okay. Again, for accounting, we use the double entry method. Every transaction is going to affect at least 2 accounts. I know in May's comprehensive, we have 3 accounts. Trying to think off the top of my head. Week 4, I believe we have one with 3 accounts, but mainly everything is going to be with 2 accounts. So it's going to be somewhat straightforward. And again, every transaction is going to have a debit and a credit. If you have 2 debits, you may only have 1 credit. So if you received cash from a customer and they promised to pay, so you received $100 from a customer and they promised to pay $100 in the future. So you have $100 cash, $100 accounts receivable, and then your revenue would be for a total of those 2 amounts just to make sure that the transaction stays in balance. So when you start doing your T accounts, make sure that everything stays in balance. It'll be pretty easy to see that at first if it doesn't. But we're going to go through some transactions now to get, hopefully, a little clearer. So first, again, I cannot figure out the poll easily right now. So in the chat, what is the correct way to write the accounting equation? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? Make it a little bigger. It is all of the above. And I'm pretty sure the conference assignment is almost word for word from this question. It is definitely all of the above. I like to throw in none of the above to see which students are actually paying attention. So, okay, examples. Now we're going to go through some examples. Some of these are word for word out of your book. And so most of them have to do with the homework you're going to be asked to complete. So let me see if I can make this a little smaller. Okay, so Adams invested cash by making a deposit in a bank account for the business of $8,000. So what two accounts are we going to use? We're going to use accounts receivable and capital, cash and capital, accounts receivable and accounts payable, or cash and accounts payable. So if we invested money in the business, so what did we deposit? And then what did we do? Exactly. Ah, it's actually, okay, this is a little trick I love about accounts receivable and accounts payable. If it does not say on account, assume it is cash. So if the transaction does not say on account, assume it is cash. This one we have, let's see, we have cash, and that one doesn't work too well. Okay. We invested cash, so we're going to go with that. That is what we're going to increase. And it's capital because the Adams is the owner because it doesn't tell us any differently. So it's going to be cash and capital because it says he invested cash. So this one is a common one. We paid rent for July of $150. Are we going to use rent expense and accounts payable, rent expense in capital, rent expense in accounts receivable, rent expense in cash? Remember, if it does not say on account, we're going to assume it has cash. Exactly. So if you have a mortgage instead of a rent, it would be mortgage expense in cash. So when you pay your employees, you're also going to use cash, except it would be wages expense. But when it does not say on account, always assume it is cash. Here is a great example. Purchase tools on account from Clean Tools for $600. So what accounts are we going to use? Focus on what we purchased and how we purchased it. Okay, this is where it gets tricky. Accounts receivable and accounts payable. So, accounts receivable is when our customers purchase from us. Accounts payable is when we purchase from another business. See if I can switch it off for red. There we go. Let me zoom in. So accounts receivable is an asset. And so that is when our customers promise to pay us. So let's say we provide carpet cleaning. So we cleaned a customer's carpet. They promised to pay us in 15 days. That would be an accounts receivable. We're expecting our customer to give us money. Accounts payable is a liability. So it's essentially like a loan. We've borrowed items from a business with the promise to pay. So do those two make sense? That gets students confused every time. Okay. I will be posting the link from this video into the class. So if you need to go back and watch it later to refresh your memory, by all means, use it as a resource. Okay. We paid our part-time assistant for the first half of the month of $100. So is it going to be wages, expense, and accounts payable, wages, expense, and accounts receivable, expense in cash, or expense in capital? Exactly. You will have a lot of transactions over the quarter that deal with paying employees. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to use wages, expense, and then you're going to credit cash. The only one I can think of off the top of my head is in week 11 that you will not use wages, expense. So focus on whenever you're paying an employee, it's wages, expense, and cash. So I don't think you have any this week where you're paying cash, where you're paying employees. So I know you have some on week 4, but I don't remember about week 3. So financial statements. Have either of you looked through chapter 2 yet or started reading it? Yeah, I never started reading the textbook on Tuesday unless I had like 3 different books for that class to read for the same week. So I am not surprised. Page 33 in your textbook. You might want to make a note for yourself. Page 33 has examples of the income of the financial statements that you will need from now through week 6. It gives you a perfect example of how you fill out each one. It is a great resource to use. So as I mentioned previously, we have 3 statements that we're going to work with for most of this quarter. We have the income statement, which tells us how much money or lost the company made. The statement of owner's equity, how much is the company worth? And the balance sheet. That's where we see if our formula stays in balance. If not, we know something is wrong somewhere. So we have to go back through everything from start to finish. So those are the 3 statements we're going to deal with. The next slides, I actually took images directly off of page 33. So this is directly out of your textbook. See if I can zoom in without making it too big. Okay, the income statement. The first thing we list is the revenues. So how did the company make the money? What did they do to earn that? So in this case, it's delivery fees. So the company provided delivery services for something. It could be food, it could be furniture, it could be cars, it could be pretty much a limitless idea. Then we list our expenses. This would be gas expense, electricity expense, food expense, wages expense, rent expense, mortgage expense, gas and oil expense. Anything you have to pay out to keep the business running. And then that would give you your total expenses, and then you would subtract the two amounts to find out your net income or net loss for the period. For the purpose of this class, we're going to use month periods. So every period we're going to be is for the month ended whatever. April, May, October, whatever. So does the income statement make sense? It's usually, and it's always the first one that is filled out. You have to have information from the income statement to successfully complete the statement of owner's equity. Yes, the net income is the profit for that month. So that is how much they earned, subtracting the expenses that they had to pay out. Gives us the net income. On chapter 5, we will have a net loss on one of the problems. But for the most part, we're only going to show we're going to show a growth or a profit for the month. Okay. The next one is the statement of owner's equity. Here is where we're going to need how much profit the company made for the month. So in this case, we're going to start with the beginning capital. How much did the company have when it opened its doors? So for the most part, all of our statement of owner's equity is going to start with a 0 at the top. Let's see if I can get it to highlight like I want this time. Okay. Almost every account, every problem we do is going to have no capital at the beginning of the month. Then we're going to have how much the owner invested. So in the previous transaction that we looked at for Adams, instead of $2,000, we would have the $8,000 there. Then our total investment would be the $8,000. Here is the amount that we need from the income statement. We need to know how much the company made or lost for the month. How much did the owner withdraw for personal use? So then we would just subtract the net income and how much the owner took out. That's going to tell us if there's an increase or loss in capital. And then finally, it's going to tell us how much the company is worth at the end of that period. In this case, the company is worth $3,100. So it made that $1,100. Does that, how we use those two statements, make sense? I know this is all new, so it's probably just all starting to blur. Okay. The last financial statement that we're going to focus on is the balance sheet. This is where we prove if our debits and credits are actually equal to each other. So assets, we're going to list all of our assets. In this case, it's cash, how much they have in the bank. Accounts receivable, how much their customers still have to pay them. Their supplies, how much supplies do they have on hand? In this case, it could be, since it's a delivery equipment, it could be paper. It could be pens. It could be, if it's pizza delivery, it could be cardboard boxes that they put the pizza in. Whatever they determine to be supplies. Prepaid insurance. So if you pay your insurance for 6 months in advance, that would be an asset. So you would list that as part of your assets, and then delivery equipment. This company somehow has $3,600 worth of equipment. That could be bikes, it could be cars that the company owns, it could be mopeds, it could be scooters, you name it. Whatever they determine to be delivery equipment. The liabilities is accounts payable. That's how much they owe to other businesses. So again, that would be if they purchased supplies on account, they said, oh, we'll buy these from you now, but we'll pay you in 10 days, 15 days. Usually when you do an accounts payable, they give you terms of the account. How long do you have to pay? That is something you would definitely go into in accounting too. If you have to take that class, you would start getting into the terms of accounts payable. It's kind of like when you buy a car, you're given, this is the amount you pay each month by this date. And sometimes if you have a mortgage, you have, and there's a fee for early payoff. So that would be taken into account. And then we have the capital amount. So we take the ending amount from the statement of owner's equity, and that is listed in as capital on the balance sheet. So that's going to help determine whether your amounts balance. If you look, it shows that these two amounts balance. If they did not balance, something is wrong. Either you've entered an amount incorrect, you transposed numbers, you looked at the wrong problem for part of it you looked at the correct problem. There can be a myriad of different reasons why your amounts are off. If you get to this point on your homework and you're ready to throw things out the window, throw them in the trash. Send me your file via email within Canvas. Ask me to look at it. I'm more than happy to find your error and send it back to you and give you some advice on what is incorrect. How can you fix this to proceed with the problem? I am here to help. It's frustrating when students don't ask for help and I know they need it. As an instructor, I'm very underutilized each quarter, so please ask any and all questions. There are no stupid questions in this class, so please ask away. So are there any questions on any of the financial statements? Again, page 33 in your textbook is a great page to look at because it goes through the exact financial statements. Okay. We are almost done. I wasn't sure how long tonight would take. Here we go. Okay. Wrap up. And I forgot to update the problems for next week. There is, again, depending on which section you're in, office hours are Tuesday from 2 to 4 and Wednesday from 2 to 4 and by appointment. So if you go to the announcements for the week, you'll see exactly when office hours are. Next week's homework is chapter 3, and there's not a quiz next week. There is an actual exam next week. I have posted the exam review in the class. So you can go ahead and start looking up information for that. And that's pretty much all I have. And need to remember to change the assignments. Are there any questions on anything? If you don't feel asking questions here, feel free to send me an email, text. Okay. Please remember I'm here to ask any questions. And if there are no questions, that is all I had. You guys are more than welcome. I know accounting can be very stressful to begin with.